Howdy, it's time for another update on the Ridgeline, and once again, it's bad news. I did more troubleshooting on it, and everything I did led me to believe that the PCM was bad. So I bought a brand new PCM, and I used the scan tool that I have to allow the immobilizer to work with it, and the truck started fine and had the same problem. Still had the evaporative vent light come on and the SRS light come on, and it always came up as a temporary code DTC P0498, and then it was very hard to clear. Sometimes I'd have to take the battery off. Sometimes it would still have the code, I think, even after taking the battery cable off. And I tried to clear it and it would remain. And at one point it was even trying to make the code permanent, which I've never seen a permanent code before. So basically, as a last resort, and everything was telling me that the PMC, what is it, powertrain, PCM was bad. And alldata.com, I believe, told me that you might need to reflash the firmware on the PCM. So I know I can't do that here. That's something the dealer would have to do. So I made the decision to take it to the dealer. I'd had trouble with going to the dealer before because they didn't want to work on a salvage vehicle. I found a dealer that would look at it. They didn't have any problem with it being salvaged at all, which initially I thought was good news. And I took it in, and they were at first going to do a 1-hour diagnostic, and they did that, and they came back and they said, your PCM is bad. And I said, well, I appreciate your diagnostic. That's what all my information was telling me as well. But the thing is, I just put a brand new PCM in, and they said, well, is it used? I said, no, it's brand new from Honda. I just bought it, and I just installed it the day before I took it up there. And they said, okay, well, we'd like to have more time to troubleshoot it. And I said, well, what's your plan? They said, well, we're just going to troubleshoot it. I said, okay. They said, we think we can figure something out in 3 or 4 hours. Now, this is a very simple circuit. I've done quite a bit of troubleshooting on it, and I'm no stranger to troubleshooting, and I've learned a lot, at this point. It basically has one wire that goes to a 12-volt switch circuit going back to the evaporative canister vent solenoid, and then it has a wire that goes from the PCM to the solenoid that is a switched ground. So when the computer turns on that wire, it allows the ground to connect through the computer. There's a transistor in there. And I thought, well, in 4.5 hours or 4 or 5 hours, they certainly should be able to troubleshoot such a simple circuit. And now I worked on it quite a bit before, more than that, and I hadn't figured it out, but I figured they have HDS, Honda Diagnostic Service, or system, and they have access to a forum which is Honda techs only. And this guy that I've been working with on Reddit, he's been trying to help me, and he is a member of that forum, and he even told me to tell him to tag his name and he would try to help through the forum. There also is Honda Super Techs. Now apparently there's only like 2 or 3 of them in the country, but these people are supposed to be extremely highly trained, and they're able to help technicians that are having struggles. So they have more resources at the dealer than what I have. They have HDS, they have access to the forum, and they have access to Super Techs. They also have the other technicians in the shop. So I agreed to the 4 or 5 hours, and I said, when you're done, I want to have a complete assessment of everything you've checked so that I'll be able to, if you're not able to fix it or whatever, I'll be able to continue my troubleshooting or take it somewhere else, and they won't have to check everything that you've already checked. They said no problem. Well, I decided to leave the truck because the place is about 45 minutes away, and I stayed for the first hour, the initial diagnostic, and then I took my scooter out of the back and I came home and I left the truck there for 6 days. Well, after a few days, they said, we're unable to find the problem and we need more time. And I said, well, I've been talking through the service advisor, and I said, I appreciate it if I can speak to the technician. So the technician called me on his personal phone, and I spoke with him, and he seemed like a nice guy. And I asked him, what he's done and what his plan is moving forward, because he wanted more time to troubleshoot. And basically said, well, I've just been continuing diagnostics. And I was like, well, can you get any more specific? And he really couldn't get more specific for whatever reason. And I said, well, what's your plan moving forward? And he said, just to continue what we're doing. So I didn't know what he'd been doing, and I didn't know what he planned to do moving forward. Now, I'm in the hole for over $700 already, and I don't mind spending money. I understand they've got tons of overhead. I knew when I took it to a dealer it wasn't going to be cheap, and I'm willing to spend good money. But I'm not willing to spend good money after bad. So without a plan moving forward, I decided that I didn't want to move forward with more diagnostics because he didn't outline a plan that sounded reasonable to me. And I said, I'd appreciate it if you can check the tension of the connectors going into the PCM. That was one of the things the guy from Reddit told me to check. Sometimes the tension on the connectors go bad, and they have a special go, no-go tester. Also, I asked him to take the rest of the sheathing off of the wiring harness going into the PCM and to mark the wire that goes to the vent canister solenoid. And he said he would do that. And I said, I want a assessment of everything that you've done. And he said, okay. So that was all we were going to do, was just basically wrap up what we've done. So I didn't hear anything from him for another day or two. And I texted him and I said, I just want to remind you of those 3 things, because I had his personal number and I just wanted to have a record that I'd asked for those 3 things. He didn't respond. So I went to pick it up yesterday or the day before, and I texted him again. I said, I'm coming to pick up the truck in an hour. Just want to remind you of these 3 things. So he didn't respond again. So I decided to go up there. I took my scooter up there and I went up and spoke with the service manager, who was a complete jerk to me. He said, we don't have any records of anything that he's done, and here's your bill for $700 and some. And he handed me the bill, and basically it states on here, the only thing it says he did was continued diagnostic. That's all he said he did, which is all the information I got. And then they had added a $55 shop fee, which I know how shop fees work. Basically, it's 10% just so they can make 10%. And if they fixed it, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But when you spend $700 in 4 hours, refuse to give me an assessment, and have not found anything wrong with it, even though it's a very simple circuit, then I have a problem with spending $55 for shop fees when they didn't use any shop supplies. So he kept being a jerk to me, and at some point he called me an asshole. Now this is a service manager of some sort. And basically I said, I'm not comfortable paying that shop fee. You didn't use any materials, you didn't use any shop supplies. And long story short, there was some back and forth, and eventually I paid the bill. He took off the shop fee, and I paid a bill of $660 for nothing, basically. He did mark the wire that I asked him to mark. So for $660, he took off some electrical sheathing and marked a wire. So I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to take a little break because obviously I'm frustrated with this again. But I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to get back in there and check to see if I can bypass the entire harness from front to rear. And I'm also going to see if I can apply 12 volts to the circuit to keep the 12 volts from dropping out. Because one of the things it's doing is that it'll have, if I disconnect the solenoid, it'll have 12 volts positive, and when I turn on the PCM, it'll have a negative connection. But when I attach it to the solenoid, that goes to 0. And I'm not sure why. It's like 12 volts is dropping out. So I'm going to try to check some more things using basic diagnostic tools that I have available here. The HDS, I don't know if it did anything for them. I mentioned it several times. They also said Honda does not reflash PCMs. They would not reflash it. And they also apparently did not use the forum. They certainly did not contact a super tech. And whether they networked amongst themselves and the mechanic shop, I don't know.